The beginning of his presentation was very humorous, and I didn't realize we were going down such a serious road, and it was nice to come full circle and have some humor, even though there was a difficult situation in his life. And I think it was a perfect example of how change can affect you and how it's important to move forward and grow through that change.
Oh, I just thought it was wonderful, and just what we need to hear, just what people in healthcare marketing need to hear, the real human story. And I just think his wife is very lucky to have him for a husband. I think, it was a great story with a wonderful ending. He talked about change a lot, and his life dramatically changed. And it was just very captivating and moving.
My wife and I met when my family moved in across the street from her family when we were in the 7th grade. And we went steady in the 8th grade, actually. And then she started high school and met somebody else and dumped me. We got back together in college, and so we started going out. This is us at a party in 1968. That is she on the left in her handmade poncho. Sort of a macrame planter hanger that you wear. Now this is us 2 years later. We've now married and had our daughter, and this is us 5 years later. My wife was still kind of in that hippie mode. I'd gone on to be a disco god. And for those of you who are thinking, no, he's going to go through his whole family album year by year, I'll jump up to the year 2000. Here we are. At this point, I'm doing what I'm doing now as a speaker. My wife had went ahead and finished up school and became a mortgage banker. And my daughter became a speaker as well. And she speaks on the whole generation issue and how to deal with different generations in the workplace. About that time, we also got very interested in being active. This was us in 2002 on a bicycle tour through Vermont to see the leaves change. Now, I took this picture from my bicycle of my wife's riding her bicycle, and she hates this picture. She says, "There's a target on my butt." But I thought it was a pretty cute picture. And this is us on our one of the best bike rides we ever took, and this was in Italy. We rode through Tuscany, and that's my daughter on the right, and CJ, my wife, on the left, the love of my life. And this was taken in a cafe in Tuscany, and I don't know if you can see the look in her eye, but she is just one delightful person with the devil in her eye. She is. This was in 2002, and this was in 2004. You see, in 2003, on October the 11th, we were on a bicycle tour through the wine country in Northern California. And we had climbed up to the top of about a 2-mile grade up to the top of this hill, and we stopped and we had a little chat and, kidded around, and then we started down the hill. And I'm a lot more reckless rider than my wife, and so I zipped on ahead and got to the bottom of the hill, and I sat there for a while, and she never showed, and finally somebody pulled up and said, "Were you riding with a woman?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, there's been an accident. She's up on the hill, and she's unconscious." So he gave me a ride back up the hill. And when we arrived, my wife was laying in the middle of the highway. There were flares around her, and people had stopped, and there was a woman sort of directing her care. It turned out to be an RN, and she was unconscious and laying face down, and blood was running down the hill from her face. And it turns out that despite wearing a helmet, she got what they call a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. Now, we think of people coming out of comas like they do in the movies, where people just wake up and say, "Gee, where have I been?" And that was what we hoped for, although the doctors, as days went by, discouraged us from thinking that. And what happened was she opened one eye. So she was officially out of the coma, and she was now officially in what they call a persistent vegetative state. And she was in that state for 7 months. During that time, we were given no hope. And this was just about the time that the Shivo case was in the news. And in fact, one doctor said, you know, your wife is in, her brain functioning is much higher than the Shivo case, but you got to start having the same kind of expectations. But I didn't believe it. And the reason I didn't believe it was that one evening, maybe it was in December, I guess, so it was after she'd kind of come awake, but she was in this vegetative state. I kissed her goodnight. And for the first time in over 2 months, she kissed me back. And that one told me that she was in there. And so I started having hope.
Larry was able to talk about something very personal in his life, the accident that his wife sustained when they were on a bike journey. And I work at a rehab hospital and constantly seeing patients and families who have gone through similar situations. So it was very encouraging to hear someone who had gone through a similar situation and had been able to support his wife in such a way that she continued to improve.
She also started to make efforts to talk. Now, the staff did not believe that she could talk because all it was gibberish, but I could tell that she was trying to say something. It was, and I knew that she would eventually say something. In fact, I had fantasies about it, that she would say, Larry, I love you, or you are wonderful, or you're the best husband I ever had, or something, you know, momentous. Well, what she did say was, one evening, an aide who really liked her and was with me on trying to understand what she was saying, but had yet to decipher a word, we were putting her arm brace on. She wore this arm brace to keep her from getting contractures. And my wife did not like the arm brace and always kind of struggled against it. And that night, as we're putting it on, she just blurted out, "Take that damn thing off!" And at that point, I realized she can talk. Here we are, we're doing a walkathon for breast cancer. And occasionally she comes with me to make presentations. This was at the Kansas Healthcare Association. She came up on stage to talk to the audience. And she doesn't say much, but it's quite moving to hear her.
The nice thing is we probably could have gone on for about another hour. It was too short. I was so enthralled in the story and what was going on that when I came out, it took me a moment to kind of put myself in a different mind frame.
But I'll tell you, along the way, there were certain individuals who made a huge difference for us. Caretakers who care. People who went out of their way to do something special. There was an aide who just loved CJ and would make an effort to be assigned to her. And I always hoped that this aide, Alicia, would be there to be her aide. But when Alicia wasn't, she was assigned somewhere else, she would come down on her breaks, and she would chit-chat and jive with CJ, treat her like a sister. They would gossip. Now, my wife at the time was in a persistent vegetative state, basically staring at the wall. But this aide came down and talked to her like a real human being. In fact, they gossiped about stuff that went on at the nursing home that I'm sure the administrators didn't want aides talking to her about. But I loved it. And on top of that, Alicia went out of her way to make sure that CJ got great care.
CJ, we're going to be showing this tape to people who work in healthcare. Do you have any advice to give them?
They act like the people that they care for. It makes a big difference.
direct care staff needs to hear this story, and it's not even, it's everybody within in any place that cares for our most vulnerable folks, is they need to hear the story.
I think in our industry, in the healthcare industry, we deal with numbers, especially in marketing. We deal with a lot of numbers and procedures and policies, and this reminds us, Larry's presentation reminded us to think about the people, the customer of healthcare, and the real stories of the people and their experiences in our hospitals and in our healthcare facilities. And that can get lost sometimes.
Well, thank you, CJ. I really appreciate it.
All right. You're welcome.